In this podcast episode, we're going to be talking a lot about celebrity divorces because there's been a lot in the social media space as well as in the actual A-list celebrity space, from Ariana Grande to Tom Brady to Bobby Altoff, the podcaster, Gary Vaynerchuk, Will Smith, Destiny and Melina, Hugh Jackman and his wife, Joe Jonas and his wife, and Austin McBroom. It's really fascinating, and hopefully you'll be entertained and maybe you'll learn something, because I'm going to reflect on this and think about what can we learn so we don't marry the wrong person. And this is not something I ever really talk about in my content, but I found it would be a nice change of pace. Also, Alex Hormozy said a quote that I've agreed with and I've had in my brain for years before he said it, but recently he posted a YouTube video on relationships, and his quote was basically that we spend more time thinking about what car we want to buy than what partner we're going to have, even though the partner may be the most important decision in your life. So when we're talking about relationships and dating, I mean, it's just really fascinating. And lately, there's just been a lot more huge divorces, from Bill Gates to not even A-list celebrities, but in the tech world, there's Bill Gates, and then there's Jeff Bezos getting divorces, and everyone seems to be getting divorces all of a sudden, and it's really tragic and sad. And let's just kind of unpack that to understand why that's happening. What can we learn from it so we don't get divorced and choose the wrong partner? And then we're going to go even deeper into the social media world, because there's certainly some of these people like Bella Poarch who also got a divorce, but also kind of had a secret marriage on her rise to becoming one of the most followed women ever on TikTok. And then, we're going to discuss how fame and social media and in raising your status rapidly in a short amount of time can really wreck your existing romantic life, and how that may differ for a man versus a woman. And I'll bring in like an old school example with the guy who did Han Solo in Star Wars, Harrison Ford, who also, fun fact, was a carpenter until like his 40s or 50s, until he all of a sudden hit it big as an actor. So we'll see how all this kind of plays out. And then we'll talk about some unique things, like how Destiny, another huge YouTuber and streamer, had a kind of falling out with his ex-wife, even though they were very predominantly and outspokenly pro polyamory, and how that just kind of backfired and all his content aged poorly. So much to talk about, but I think the real thing here is divorce and improving your success in dating and relationships. But more so, let's just have some fun. Let's be entertained here. So let's kick it off strong with, I think, my most interested story, which is probably Tom Brady and his wife, or Bobby Altoff. In fact, I actually think the Bobby Altoff one is more interesting, so I'll start there and then we'll circle back to Tom soon. So Bobby Altoff is essentially, if you don't already know, it's pretty big in pop culture, but she was a mom TikToker who had quite a following on TikTok, and then she transitioned, and by transition I mean she moved to a different niche on TikTok, where she basically did these awkward interviews where it's kind of like a dry, deadpan style of humor. I think the best example is Between Two Ferns with Zach Galifianakis. He did something similar where he would bring on celebrities or actors and have this like kind of assholey humor where he'd be an asshole to him, and it was really dry humor. He would do something kind of similar, and people just ate it up. Personally, it's not my cup of tea at all. I think she's just being a jerk most of the time, but others don't see it that way. They found it really funny, and it took off. She got millions upon millions of views, and then she kind of leveraged that very quickly to get more and more famous guests on. And I think within a matter of a few months, she had all these big names on, all these rappers from Tyga to Drake to he had the billionaire Mark Cuban was on. You have Jessica Alba on, and she's still going, and she's gotten a lot of very famous celebrities on her podcast. Now, the issue is with her divorce and this drama with Drake. Now, here's the thing. She's trying to keep it as private as possible, so we really don't know all the details. What we do know is that I think shortly after the Drake episode came out, which like that put her really on the map. She was already on the map, but like Drake is like top A-list, so that really put her on the map. Shortly after that, some weird stuff happened. She took down the episode. They unfollowed each other on Instagram. Then the episode when she interviewed him happened in a bed. Like that, they thought that would be a fun gimmick. But then there's like this like romantic undertone to it. And then on top of that, she's like asking like flirty questions during the interview, like, would you date me and stuff like that. So then, that set the internet ablaze. And of course, there's a bunch of celeb gossip influencers. I think like the CEO of Barstool or something. I don't know who. I don't follow Barstool, so I don't know the details. But he speculated a lot about it. He was in like text messaging with Bobby. So there's just a lot of speculation and inference, and people were claiming supposedly that she may have had a intimate encounter with Drake, to put it like nicely. And that's why they had this kind of falling out and the episode was taken off. And it was really never addressed for a few months. I mean, she did put out a cryptic statement, but it was basically like, no, it had nothing to do with any type of romantic interaction with Drake. It just had to be taken down. And so it was just very cryptic, never fully explained. And then more recently, like in the last couple months, she has announced that she has divorced her husband. So, I think those two were just normal people before all this happened. And then what's even weirder is the issue day of divorce was July 4th. And I think Drake's episode came out like July 20th. So there may be some tie-in there where maybe her husband wants to call it out, but doesn't want to call it out of privacy. So he's making a subtle inference there to imply it. But, out of respect for his partner still, he's not. We'll never really know. But the point being, it's one potential instance of how, when you go from just normal couple, no big social media following, to one where you or your partner just skyrocket in fame and status, and it just comes with a lot of complications. You're just not really sure if you can trust them, and so on and so forth. Now, the Bella Porsche incident is also very similar, but has more evidence from what I can tell. Now, once again, the evidence here is still limited to a degree, but there's more of it. Let me explain. So Bella Porsche, if you're not aware, she really blew up like a year or so into TikTok. She wasn't the number one when TikTok started. And I remember it was like 2021-ish where she really started to blow up. And then she surpassed like Charli D'Amelio and some of the others to become at one point the number one most followed on TikTok. And she did these like little things where like she'd be all cutesy in front of the camera, like make these cute faces and emulate like Pixar characters or like animated characters. And it was always flabbergasting to me how that propelled her. But like, I guess people like that cutesy, cute girl vibe. And I mean, it's kind of not that different from Charli D'Amelio dancing on TikTok. But the point is, she had tens of millions of followers. Then she started her music, and then she was like in a bunch of YouTube videos with top influencers. Like she was part of Mr. Beast, one of Mr. Beast's videos. So she got pretty big pretty quickly. And fairly recently, after like, I think 2 or 3 years of fame or whatnot, she announces this like divorce from her husband, who we didn't even know about. Like she completely hid the fact that she had a husband this whole time. And like we knew that like before she hit it off on TikTok, she was basically someone who like worked for the military for a while. So it was just really interesting to see her kind of blow up. And you could tell like maybe she got a little bit of ego about it all. Like she felt like she was better than you or holier than thou, just by like how she interacted and dressed during her blow up time. Like she was not wearing normal people clothes. She was wearing these like intricate costumes. The way she acted, like she felt like she was a celebrity. Like, and so then she announces she has a boyfriend, and like before that, I think there was a bunch of clips with her hanging out, collabing with the rapper Tyga, and then there was like clips of her with photos with her and Tyga in like intimate, like leg locked positions on like chilling on like a somewhere by the pool. And so they divorced, and you never really get all the specifics because they want to keep their lives private. They're not sharing it all. But the general public and most of the consensus right now seems to be against Bella, because it seems to be, at least the public's convinced that she got famous, got successful, hit this other level, and then was now amongst a more elite class of men or whatnot. And that came with a lot more temptation with these rappers. And then she cheated on her partner during this time, which resulted in the divorce. Now, I mean, that whole dynamic is really getting more prevalent, or at least I hear a lot more celeb news about it recently, because there's so many more stories I'm going to mention, and I've already hinted at, and then even more I haven't even hinted at yet, but there's plenty out there. There's the Usher incident, but we'll get to that when we get to it. So, long story short, it just seems really bad. And apparently she went on a podcast, and Bella was like, crying and like saying how like, it just really sucks because, when you want to become a star and famous and all this stuff, and you're a performer by nature and by heart, and your partner just isn't about that life, and they don't want that fame and all that. It's just a mismatch, and it's just terrible that like I can't express myself how I want to and pursue my dreams. And unfortunately, the general public, you look at the comments, they're just trashing her. They're not. A lot of the comments are basically like, "Yeah, you're a homewrecker. Like you cheated on your partner. Stop trying to get sympathy." They're like accusing her of trying to play the sympathy game. And yeah, it's really a tragedy, the whole situation. And arguably, like, one should not have sympathy for her for cheating on her husband. But that's a separate thing from, being sad for her because her and her partner have different dreams or goals or aspirations in life. So I would keep those separate, but I certainly don't have sympathy for her for cheating on her partner. And unfortunately, when you have that sudden rapid astronomical rise to fame, that comes with a lot more temptation and all this stuff, which I do believe some people have the ability to weather. But unfortunately, this story is just telling a lot of us that it's like probably many people do not. They simply just don't have that temptation in their life. We're just average people going to Target every day, so we don't have to deal with that temptation. So it is rather sad, and it just seems like, a typical situation where a person will say one thing, say they value loyalty, but then when push comes to shove and they're in that situation where there's, a time to upgrade, they do that. But once again, this is just one data set, one person, and you can't extrapolate it to billions of people. I think a lot of people also make that mistake. They're like, oh, so this celebrity did this, and so therefore all the billions of people in this world are screwed and they'll never find love because, if Tom Brady can't stay faithful, then, we're all screwed. Well, we'll get to Tom Brady, but I think my point is you can't extrapolate one data set or one anecdote to a population. That's not a statistically significant experiment. You need to have a strong, large sample size. And so just because one person screwed up, or in this case, we're going to be talking about like 10 different celebrities, just because 10 screwed up doesn't mean that is indicative of most people in the general population who do not have to deal with these unique, crazy, extenuating, extreme circumstances in life. But that's not to say that some micro level of this is not still possible in your local town or city. So you still got to be careful. So that's the Bella Poarch story. And yeah, I mean, as far as the whole, whether or not she's trying to get sympathy or not, and crying about how like her partner doesn't have the same dreams as her, and that's what crumbled the relationship. Sure, I do think having consistent dreams with a partner is important, but if she is implying or suggesting in any way that that is the cause of the breakup when she actually did cheat, then I don't think that's a fair thing to do. I think really the cheating is a much more horrible offense, although like both things can crack a relationship for sure. And I think that's something that anyone who has a long-term partner, and we're not talking short-term relationships or hookups, but long-term, once a long-term partner, has to think about. Like, are you going to be with someone who is constantly shooting for the moon, constantly trying to build massive fame or massive brands or businesses, and is constantly trying to hit the public eye? Because in the rare case that they actually make it big and become this ultra famous star, which is becoming more accessible. I mean, it's not easy for any means, but more accessible than ever before with the rise of social media and the Bobby Altovs and Bella Poarches. Clearly, you can see in both of these instances, there may or may not, I mean, I say may because we don't really know all the facts with the Bobby Altov situation, but in either case, it's a situation where there's this massive rise in fame, and that comes with a lot of insecurities for the man, a lot more they have to guard against, a lot more potential cheating and whatnot. And so it's really a dangerous thing. And if you're not ready for that, maybe you shouldn't even really, look to be with a partner who's trying to shoot for the stars and become famous or whatnot. So that's that. And I mean, I remember when I used to watch American Idol and Crystal Bowersox was competing and she made it all the way to the finals. She revealed in a interview, afterwards, like a podcast interview, that her husband, oh no, it was a boyfriend, not husband. Her boyfriend broke up with her the day before she performed in the finals because he was like a small town country dude and he wasn't into or ready for or didn't want the fame or anything. So that is just like sad, but it's like, you got to figure that out beforehand. You got to think about these things, and most people don't. And so, when you're two country people, but your partner is a rock star in terms of her singing skill, and she's constantly auditioning for singing shows like American Idol, what happens if she hits it big? Then you can't make it work. Are you just banking on them never hitting it big and maintaining your homely life? But yeah, that was Crystal Bowersox, another example. Back in the old days of American Idol, she was like a kind of like a soul country singer. And so yeah, there's all these examples of this. So I can give you the male equivalent with Harrison Ford at another point, but I think with the the males, I mean, it's more or less the same type of story. So maybe I won't get into the Harrison Ford stuff yet. But, when they all of a sudden see this rise in options, with men, I think they're more kind of just going to go for it. And I mean, let me put that back. I don't want to speculate. If you want to bring this back to science, there's this great book by Dr. David Buss, and there's actually a few studies in there. He's a scientist of evolutionary biology, and towards the last few chapters of the book, he does look at some large scientific studies on how often men and women cheat and why they cheat, and the numbers are kind of scary, to be honest. There's a good amount of cheating going on and reasons for that. So it is certainly something to look out for. But usually the cheating often happens when there's a certain drive, like a evolutionary drive, that's not being met. So women generally crave emotional attachment according to the book, and then men, it's more of a physical attachment. But check out the book for more details on that. It was just really interesting seeing that. Honestly, I was a bit discouraged by the statistics on how often cheating happens, but I would argue to say that, like, even if it's a higher percentage, the majority still do not cheat. So you gotta look at the general public, people who live out in the Midwest, in the country, in towns. You all are probably better off living normal lives without all this temptation. Celebrities, they're in a different world, and it really just sucks because I think now that I'm going to move to Ariana Grande and Tom Brady very soon, but think about it, like, they're what you assume or you think or you dream of having one day, or at least some of us do, and that's like fame, money, wealth, everyone like adores you, and then you have it all, and you're rich, you're beautiful, you're good looking, you're athletic, maybe you're a top athlete like Tom Brady, and yet you still can't, like so many celebrities, most of Hollywood, they still can't stay together for more than like 1 or 2 years before they get divorced. Like the average divorce, it seems like for celebrities, like 1 or 2 years. It's like that short, like maybe you shouldn't have rushed into it. So there's clearly something off where these people are looking for the wrong things, maybe superficial things in a partner, and it's really costing them. Or it's just that Hollywood environment where there's so much temptation and stimuli, or a strange, crazy lifestyle that just makes it really difficult. So let's talk Ariana Grande, since that was recent, and then Tom Brady's also very recent. So if you're not filled in, I don't know why you wouldn't be, because this was all over the celeb gossip news. But if you, I guess many people don't listen to celeb news, so maybe you don't know, but this was everywhere, so I don't know why you don't. But the long and short of it, and you can get all the details later, but I'll just give you the short version. So Ariana Grande was with a partner already, and then her co-star, when she was filming Wicked and doing some Broadway plays in Europe, Easton Slater also had a partner, a wife. And so they were both taken. And now, in the time that they were abroad and performing in Europe, from what I can understand, there was some cheating involved. And shortly after, both of these people's significant others called for a divorce or a breakup. Now, I'm sorry if I don't have all the specific details. Like sometimes people are in the comments like, oh, you didn't get this specific fact right. I'm not a news reporter here. I'm just telling you enough news that the general public knows. I'm not trying to get every little fact here. I'm just getting, this is what the general average person would know enough of. I'm not trying to become an expert in this. This is not drama alert or anything. So that's the general gist of it, if I were to tell someone at the bar about the story. And then the shittier part of it is that then they started, and they still are dating each other. And then supposedly she shortly after released a song about it, where the song title and the theme is basically yes and. Now that people don't realize this, but it's an improv phrase. But people are just like shocked about the song, but they don't understand the double entendre improv reference. I've taken improv classes. I love improv comedy, so I understand the double entendre. It's a very theater school type of thing, but the gist of it is that she's saying in the song and the lyrics that, like, yes, I did do this. I was a homewrecker in a way, and yeah, I broke this up, and what are you going to do about it? I'm going to continue to live my life. Now, when I actually looked at the lyrics of the song, as you know, I examined it, I didn't actually see her explicitly say any of this. If anything, it was kind of vaguely inferred, but you still have to make kind of a little bit of a leap to come to that conclusion. But there's certainly a decent amount of like YouTube videos and talk shows basically claiming that she was doing this by releasing this song. And certainly with the title, yes and, I mean, it just kind of implies that, yeah, maybe she was, which is just ruining her image even more. At least my perception of her, maybe many people's perception of her, because it's not really something looked at favorably. At least I don't think it should be, for someone to ruin a relationship and do this. And by the way, I think the dialogue I've been hearing a lot is that it's all Ariana's fault, that Ethan was some type of innocent bystander. And I'm not saying like they explicitly said it that way, but it was kind of implied, or it was glossed over, that Ethan still contributed a lot to this. Like, it takes two to cheat. And so I don't think Ethan is out of fault, and I think that's something that should be emphasized more, because oftentimes it's just focused on Ariana, like, oh, he just tricked the naive, innocent Ethan Slater, and that's just not the case. Now, that being said, Ariana has a lot of power, and as Spider-Man says, with great power comes great responsibility. She is of a higher status and level and fame than Ethan Slater. Ethan, like most people, when they bring up the news about him, they just say he used to play SpongeBob on the SpongeBob Broadway musical. It's like, okay, that's pretty meh. It's not a very high status position. So, I mean, with SpongeBob being an animated show. So therefore, you know, I'm not absolving Ethan of guilt or blame at all. But with Ariana, you can't deny that she had a lot of power and temptation. And, you know, she has that draw that others don't. Like, and so when you're with Ethan, he was probably in a situation where he was really tempted by this high A-list celebrity style opportunity, and it's just really unfortunate for that to happen, and it's just a shame that like this stuff happens. Now, I'm an optimist. I don't think everyone is reprehensible. There's probably unsung heroes out there that we'll never hear about, where maybe someone high value or high status made a pass, and they were loyal and they said no. But we'll never know about these people because they don't ruin their relationships and it doesn't go public. So I believe there's unsung people out there, and some of them are celebs, but much more of them are probably just average everyday people where they can stick to their values and the temptation is not as extreme as in these situations. So it is really disappointing. And I think I like to come out of everything with a life lesson or takeaway, not just, talk about it. So I think with the Ariana situation, I think Yeah, you have to choose what you value more. Your own ethics and morals and values and your reputation and what you want to live by and be remembered by, or you just want to keep upgrading. Even if you're already in a committed relationship, you just want to keep finding an upgrade or someone who maybe has more interests and hobbies and stuff than you, and ruin and be a homewrecker. And I don't think, you have to do either or. I think that's the power of being single and just dating around until you find someone who's pretty much there. Because like once you're pretty sure after a lot of dates, you're just going to get small diminishing returns of anything that might be a little bit better. So, I really think that if she had some more ethics and values, she would have at least broken it off first with her partner before doing it, or done a lot of dating and then found her person and then committed to that, even if they found someone slightly better. And then maybe Ariana's arguing that, oh, well, this Ethan is 10 times better and I just couldn't find him until then and whatnot. But still, like, I think it would have been better if she broke it off first with her partner, just out of ethics and honor. And it was likely more of an emotional decision, like most temptations are, than a rational one. And if any type of rationalizations are backwards rationalized. Now, moving on to the Tom Brady thing, there's been some memes, some tweets about this that have gone big, where people are saying, hey, if Tom Brady can't keep his wife, what luck do the rest of us have? Because the news is that Tom's wife, Irina Shayk, cheated on Tom Brady with her Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructor. Now, here's the thing that I think correlates with the science. Irina is still dating her BJJ instructor after the breakup and getting lots of BJJ lessons. I'm just kidding. But they are still together. They are still together, months after the cheating and the divorce happened. And once again, we don't know the full story, but from the celeb gossip news, that seems to be the scene. And Tom seems to be hinting that there was certainly certain things happening between them before the divorce, which, he's calling out a bit. But it seems like how this relates to the science, as mentioned in Dr. David Buss's book, The Evolution of Desire, is towards the end of the book, he also mentions how a good majority and percentage of the cheating is not a one-time kind of a one-off type of deal, like a one-night stand. It's usually some type of maneuver to switch. It's called mate choice switching, where they switch and upgrade to a better mate that they date in the long term. Now, at least with these two celeb examples that are very recent, that seems to be the case. Ariana and Ethan are still long-term dating. Tom Brady's wife, Irina, and her Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructor are still dating long-term. So it's not something where it's like, oh, we're going to do something quick for the fun of it. It seems to be motivated more so for a long-term relationship thing. And in the book by Dr. Buss, and I think he mentions it and goes into more detail in some podcast interviews, he says like that discovery kind of debunked a prevalent theory before that, which is a lot of these evolutionary biologists thought that the main purpose of cheating was to kind of get better genetics, which, it's still a prevalent theory to a degree, where basically they would get genetics from someone else and then have their current partner raise the kid, not knowing that it was someone else's genetics. But while that theory is still somewhat prevalent among evolutionary biologists, now Buss is kind of shifting more towards this kind of long-term mate upgrading approach. So it is rather sad, But that whole idea about like, oh, if Tom Brady can't succeed, then I can't either. Look, I'm from like kind of a suburby state in the U.S., and it is not even close to anything glamorous or high status. And frankly, there's not much going on. And guess what? Not that much cheating or whatnot. You know, people stay loyal. They don't have much to do either. Like on a Friday night, they're just probably at home watching Netflix. But point being, when we're talking general public of America, or if you're from another country watching this, you're probably an average-ish person, so you don't really have to worry as much about the crazy temptations and crazy lifestyles of these people, which obviously add a variety of factors that make cheating or all this other stuff more probable or extreme or whatnot. And so I think another misconception here implied in that meme is that money and fame and wealth is like everything. Now, clearly it's not. It may be nice to attract or get the attention of people, but as you've seen here, that's not enough. And maybe you don't need that to that extreme. I mean, y'all probably know someone. I certainly know people back home where, you know, they're not some mega star at all, but they're, you know, just a local dude who's pretty athletic, maybe somewhat charismatic, and they do pretty well with women, and it's just, you know, all good. But, you know, just plenty of people who do well don't get intimidated or discouraged, because y'all probably know a bunch of people in your local network who are not mega rich or even rich at all or famous, and they're still able to partner up and do just fine. So it's really, I think, the overemphasis once again that these celebrities and those people who made those memes saying that, oh, if Tom Brady can't help but get cheated on, we have no chance. Those type of people are all overemphasizing money and wealth and fame in terms of long-lasting relationships. I think it's more about, and let me rephrase that. This is not just my opinion, but according to books I have read on the science of long-term relationships and dating and divorce, it's more about common dreams, values, respect, honesty, communication with each other. These traits are often underemphasized, and the glitz and glamour of Hollywood is overemphasized, so they never consider these other factors enough, and that leads to these quick divorces in the celebrity world. I mean, it's somewhat akin to how in the personal finance world, you know, a bunch of people get rich, but they've never really learned personal finance, and then they spend more than they make, even though they make a lot, and then they're bankrupt again because they didn't learn some principles about what really matters. So that's my whole point about that. And so you still will have a chance, even if you're not Tom Brady. You don't need to overemphasize all those things. And if you're curious what books I've been reading to kind of confirm that and look at that, there's definitely been a lot of scientific books about the science of divorce and decades-long longitudinal studies on what leads to divorce and what doesn't. The foremost expert and scientist on that is a scientist named Dr. John Gottman. That's Gottman, and he's written many books on it. Why have I consumed them? Because, like I said, that Hormozi quote at the beginning, most people erroneously spend more time researching what car to buy than what partner to get, and it costs them, even though the latter is the most important or one of the most important decisions you can make in your life. Okay, so let me touch a bit on Will Smith because he's still really relevant in this example, and then we'll move into some more recent celeb gossip news, including Austin McBroom with the Ace family and Destiny and Melina. So with the Will Smith situation, it's arguably a bit of old news, but I think it's really relevant here that it's worth recapping. So Will Smith, a lot of people, he's still a role model of mine in terms of career and his success in his career, but personal life, it's kind of taking a nosedive in terms of public perception. So a lot of people kind of see him as a loser or a simp or a cuck or whatever they want to call him, because apparently his wife, Jada Pinkett Smith, has just been, in their eyes, doing him wrong a lot, where apparently while they're still together, she was in her words, entanglement with another man who was Will's friend. But, when you look at the weeds of it, it's kind of like gray or confusing, because Will and Jada for like the last 6-7 years, even amidst that entanglement, they were having a lot of fights and stuff, and apparently were separated and everything but paper. But at the same time, when, that was brought up, and they brought it up publicly, which also may not have been a good move. They aired their dirty laundry and personal details on Jada's web talk show, her Red Table Talk. And, that just kind of blew up in a weird way, where she kind of detailed the entanglement. You could see how hurt Will was during the whole discussion in video in 4K. And, she describes it as an entanglement because it kind of was a situation where she, in her eyes, she felt entangled where she didn't expect or want, or she fell into this thing where, something intimate happened on a recurring basis with this other person when she wasn't looking for it. But that's the thing, dudes are always going to be dudes, and seize an opportunity. And unfortunately, I don't think that's a fair thing to just say it's an entanglement, like you fell into it. Like, to a degree, she probably did, but you also have to be cautious at all times, because men are men, and they think in these ways where they will try and always capitalize on an opportunity with potential woman romantically. So you got to know that the man's thinking like that when you meet him. And so even if it looks like it just happened, like, they were thinking like that. And so, I don't think, as kind of like the general public, I don't think she's without blame. But also, it's kind of gray because they were separated but not separated. And therefore, it was okay, but it wasn't. And I think part of this, and this has been a huge discussion. I mean, every show's touched on Will Smith and the situation. And I think one theme that I got out of all these discussions is, like, more important than wealth, riches, and fame, those three things, is setting boundaries and being a man who is assertive enough to set healthy boundaries with a woman, and clear boundaries on what's appropriate, what's acceptable, and what's not. And it just seems like that was not made clear. So Will seemed at least pretty hurt about that all. But also the willingness to walk away. And I think a lot of people are seeing that right now. I certainly am, at least, where it seems like, and we don't know the full story. We never will, because, there's probably all sorts of complications behind the scenes that they haven't revealed to the public. That's celeb gossip. They don't tell you everything. But with the Will thing, it's like, it seems at least like they're still trying to make it work in a marriage, and Will is unable to walk away. And that is where the general public is just taunting him, making fun of him, calling him a pansy, because she's done all these hurtful things, and she's done more recently. I think a year or two ago, she went publicly when she launched her book to say in an interview that, oh yeah, we haven't been together for 6 years. And so people were just like, well, why would that be true if Will Smith defended you and slapped Chris Rock in front of the Oscars to basically defend you for being made fun of? It just didn't make sense if you were separated that long. So people were like, yeah, you probably think that, but Will still thinks you're together, and Will is still trying to make this work, and Jada is just like a terrible person, constantly gaslighting Will and whatnot. I don't really even fully understand what the term gaslighting means, but I assume it's just like kind of being passive aggressive all the time. And Will, according to like the general kind of pop culture public, is just being too spineless of a man to break off the relationship and set those boundaries, because he's just delusionally wants a happy marriage and a non-divorce marriage. And so I think it's really important to set boundaries and be able to walk away when you need to. And it seems like he's been unwilling to do that. And having been one of the few who's read his memoir, he made his own book recently. It's called Will. It's his memoir of his life. I feel like I understood a lot more about Will's life than most people. You can tell in the book he never wanted to be divorced. Like it's like he touched on it a few times in the book, where it's like in his mind he wants this picture perfect family, and he's always wanted it since as a kid, and therefore like always sought it out, and apparently never wanted a divorce. And when he got his first divorce, it was his ex-wife that wanted it, not him. And he really didn't want it to happen, but it happened. And then he swore to himself that he would never get divorced again. But you really can't make those promises, because there's some things out of your control. There's maybe traits about your partner that you didn't screen for well enough, and then you have to end the relationship. So you have to be able to walk away. And it just seems now, because he's made recent public statements how like they'll always be together, and how Will has unconditional love for his partner forever. It's just like not productive. Last thing I want to say is you also learn in his memoir that he was cheated on when he was very young, and he overcompensated by saying that he would be like the richest, most famous person in the world so that no one would ever cheat on him again. Kind of how I mentioned with the Tom Brady situation. Clearly, one big lesson that's kind of overlooked in this whole thing is that money and fame are clearly not the main drivers for preventing cheating. And we have two big examples of that happening with Tom Brady and Will Smith. Despite Will kind of achieving his goal of being like the biggest, baddest, most famous A-list actor known to the planet, it still didn't really work out that way. And so there's other things, as mentioned. Read John Gottman's books on them that could be more helpful for kind of keeping relationships together. But who really knows? It's a very complicated world, and it's just kind of sad to see that. And I think Will's a unique soul in that way, in the way specifically that when you read his memoir, like he's not like the typical like African American musician who wanted to like date around and hook up a lot. He like always wanted that picture perfect long-term relationship, and that is also potentially a danger of his. Is he wanted this dream so much that like sometimes you got to walk away from it and find a better partner, and it seems like he's unwilling to do that. So we'll never know all the details, but that's what we see there. And I think the lesson is, like I said, you don't have to put this burden on yourself that you need to be super rich and famous. And even if you do, it's not going to be the silver bullet you think it is. Okay, so let's touch on Destiny and Melina, which is also a very hot button recent topic. So with Destiny and Melina, so I haven't heard of Destiny until this year, but apparently he's this like famous YouTuber and streamer who does these like political debates with people. Maybe he did gaming at one point. It sounds like a gamer type of name. I glanced at his channel. Seemed he used to be a gamer just from the channel design, but I've seen like videos and clips of him since this news broke. But the story in a nutshell is that he and his now ex-wife, Melina Göransson, were essentially in a polyamorous kind of relationship. And not only were they that, but they were so outspoken with it that they would constantly go out of their way to go on big podcasts and shows like the Whatever podcast and debate people and talk about it and try and convince others that this is a perfectly beautiful, amazing, and best way of life. And I think that's one of the first issues, as others like Brett Cooper, another like social media commenter, has brought up. When you go out of your way to say that, that's different from just doing it and keeping it quiet and to yourself. When you go out of your way to do that, then you kind of open and give the green light to be attacked or disputed or debated. And so they were really outspoken on all these shows and made all these debates on how it's like perfectly fine to just have like all these different people and how it would never lead to you potentially being emotionally attached to someone else. And unfortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, those clips did not age well at all. At all. So, yeah, it almost goes without saying, but like this is pretty pop culture. A lot of people know about this, but yeah, recent news is they are now divorced. Melina got entangled with another man who she kind of caught more feelings with. And yeah, it's been a really messy divorce. Both of them have kind of, in the other person's eyes, turned into these terrible, manipulative characters. And the stories are getting even crazier. And, you know, they're just like really on bad terms now, from what I've gathered. Like I said, I don't know all the details. And this is not a news reporter channel where I have to share all the details. If you want that, plenty of other stuff on the internet to get that. But just as if I'm talking to someone at the bar, this is what I've heard at a high level. And I've seen some clips here and there, and it's just really kind of sad seeing all this kind of manifest, because there's what someone says and then what reality is. And some of those clips really didn't age well. They aged like milk left out of the fridge, because there's this one clip on the Whatever podcast where someone literally asked them point blank something about their future, and it's exactly what happened, which is, what happens if one of you gets more emotionally attached to someone else, and then it breaks off the relationship because of this polyamory and y'all seeing each other, all these other people. And both of them, Destiny being more outspoken, was like, that's no different from monogamy. We all can see different friends and stuff, and there's the risk of someone being cheated on or emotionally attached to someone else. And I think Brett Cooper made a good point on this, which I agree with, which is that's just not it's not apples to apples. It's not the same thing. It's not a good argument, because when you're polyamorous, there's the physical component, the intercourse, the coitus going on constantly, which means that there's just a lot more potential for emotions to be spurred on, because especially for women, it is not just a meaningless physical act. There's oftentimes emotions that get activated when you do these physical things, and therefore there's just a lot more chance for that to happen and danger. And, he made this argument and so outspoken on it, and Melina and him were just so confident in their argument. And look at them now. She's now with another semi-famous, pseudo-famous, I call him pseudo-famous because this is one of those dudes who got famous on TikTok for posting random crap. But and it's much easier to do nowadays than ever before, and getting 1 million followers on TikTok is not that big a deal because it's just much easier. But she's now dating this pseudo TikToker famous dude, and Destiny and Melina are not on good terms, and it's just a huge mess and ironic, and basically their lives have proven their point wrong. And in my eyes, I think that just kind of tarnishes my belief on how useful or productive debating is. It's most of the time, I feel like debates aren't even that logical. It's just a lot of circular reasoning and emotional arguments. It's more about using emotions and manipulation to persuade someone, whether or not you're logically accurate or not. Sure, if you get someone really smart and respectful and logical, you can have a logical debate, and they would also have to be really open to changing their mind. But outside of those situations, it's just this situation where you're just opening yourself up to controversy by going on to whatever podcast to talk about this. You're not going to convince anyone there. They didn't. There was just this heated battle between him and the other panelists about whether monogamy was right or wrong, and then ultimately, years later, he's been looked at. It's the situation has kind of turned him into a fool in a way. At the same time, he still seems to command a lot of respect and clout for some reason because of his political debate prowess or whatever. And a lot of people are now kind of focused on his debating again. And he recently debated another big political debater type of influencer, Ben Shapiro. So I saw some of that, and yeah, people have seemingly having moved on from that. But it is just kind of indicative of what someone claims and believes and what's true, and whether or not they win a debate or not, it doesn't matter. It's the truth that matters, and that's unfortunate. So I, for one, am not. I mean, I was into debating for a while, having watched all these clips, but I mean that discouraged me a bit about what's the point of it. And so the more ironic part even still is that in that clip with during the whatever podcast, Destiny goes on to say yeah, it would really suck if someone hypothetically got more emotionally attached and pulled Melina away. But it's the same in monogamous relationships, and God forbid it doesn't happen because we didn't get a prenup. And in that clip, Melina literally grabs his hand and holds it, and she almost smiles. And it's I was I saw that as, yeah, she's got the better deal, because it seems at the time Destiny was making a lot more money. So she's if we do get divorced, I still win out because I get all this money because we didn't sign a prenup. If we don't, we still got this awesome but strange relationship going. And yeah, I mean, it seems like she won out. And that's the danger of being wealthy and not signing a prenup. So crazy how that works. And I think people missed that when they saw that clip. But it's also just really painful and ironic from a financial standpoint. Speaking of prenups and wealth, let's touch on some semi-recent, this is kind of old now, but semi-recent billionaire news story. So we all know Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos, some of the richest people to ever live. And yeah, they both got divorces recently. Now with the Bill one, he's been pretty quiet about why, but I think enough has leaked to know that it was likely a cheating incident. the farthest that Bill will say about the incident when interviewed is that something happened and it was my fault. He won't go into detail about what, but it is rather sad to hear. And then apparently the leak and the news came from the person who Bill cheated on. Apparently it was an Asian woman or something. I could be wrong about that, but point is, apparently it happened multiple times, like 20 years ago, and then for whatever reason, she's now airing all the news about it, and Melinda found it to be legitimate. Apparently this woman was a employee of Microsoft while Bill was still employed there. And so, just a terrible situation. It reminds me of a few other biographies I read where something similar happened after a man reached a very high level of fame. Specifically, the autobiography, Total Recall by Arnold Schwarzenegger. One of my favorite biographies of all time, but I think the one stain on his life of success is towards the end of a short but very honest and dark chapter in the book where Arnold basically says that he had a few cheating incidences with his housemaid, also 20 years ago, and then 20 years later, somehow it got found out by his wife, Katherine Schwarzenegger. And it was one of his biggest mistakes. They divorced, and Arnold, for the next few years, and at least until when he was writing the end of the biography, he said he was still trying to win back his wife. It was the biggest mistake he made, and he's always been optimistic, so he feels like there's still a chance he can get back with his wife. And as of now, it's been 15, 20 years since he wrote that book. They're still not together. So it's really just kind of sad. Why does this happen? And why is it always with someone who's relatively pretty much unattractive, when you can be with someone much more attractive with that level of status? I'm thinking the same thing with the Bill Clinton incident where he cheated with Monica Lewinsky. Monica was not very attractive at all. And then the housemaid, which, photos of her surface, seemed to be pretty overweight. And so it just seemed like it was kind of a moment of weakness. Maybe their willpower was drained after a long day, which happens a lot with these high status leaders of society that need to make all these stressful decisions every day and work so hard. They're just okay, I'll just take the next whatever is nearby, even if it's not that great. And so it's probably part of maybe our deep ancestral DNA where men are kind of wired to kind of just proliferate their sperm or whatnot. But it's in the modern times, at least, it seems to be a huge mistake that tarnished Bill Clinton's reputation, tarnished Arnold Schwarzenegger's, and lost him his Arnold's wife. Now Bill Clinton somehow finessed it so that he's still with Hillary Clinton. I don't know all the details of that. I just know Bill's very charismatic. I don't know how he did that, but I think, that's Bill Clinton. Very unique situation. Now, Jeff Bezos, different situation. Probably one of the few on this list who has not cheated at all. It was simply a amicable split. Seems like whatever happened, maybe. Yeah, I mean, I imagine they were together for 20, 30 years. So I imagine when Jeff started Amazon to becoming the richest man in the world, his whole lifestyle, his persona, his traits, a lot of things changed about him, his lifestyle. And so a lot of that may have just been too much of a change from when they started dating and started getting married. And who really knows the details? They certainly are not going to disclose them to the public, but it is once again rather sad how so many of these people just kind of get divorced. Now, keep in mind, a lot of this is also kind of what's the phrase? Not confirmation bias, but like I guess hyper focus bias. Where I mean, it is confirmation bias in a way where if you're constantly just focused on the divorces and the bad news, it can seem like the whole world is bad news. But in reality, there's billions of people doing just fine, happily married, where this isn't an issue. So just keep all that in mind. There's still plenty of good people. I still think there's hope in this world. There is probably more cheating that you need to be cautious of than you may expect, but you don't have to go around life negative or pessimistic. So I'll touch on a happy story before going, or a happier divorce before going to some more controversial ones with the Ace family. So two more happier divorces in a way are Hugh Jackman and his wife Deborah Lee Furness. They were together for 27 years of marriage before announcing in September on the 15th that they would be separating. So it is still rather sad, but especially in the modern age, unfortunately, divorces are just becoming more and more common. And I mean, to have lasted 27 years in Hollywood with Hugh being such a major star. Okay, not as big as Will Smith, but still pretty big. And still lasting 27 years when the average celebrity marriage seems to be like 1 year. That is a huge feat. So props off to them. It's a little bit of a shame that they didn't stay together until death, but I think it really is something to be admired. 27 years is a massive feat nonetheless, even though they are still separating. And, someone might be listening to this and they may make the comment of, oh, like, these celebs, they weren't expecting to be married forever. They were just testing the waters. And I don't know what type of stupid argument that is, but, like, I could see someone making it, and I disagree with it. It's like, when you're getting married, even in the vows, it says, death do you part. You're marrying forever, not like expecting like, oh yeah, in like 5 years, it's going to happen. We're just married for a stage of or season of our life. That's not how it is. So this one's kind of less happy, but I don't know, still okay, is Joe Jonas and Sophie Turner. So first off, I didn't even know they got married, but apparently they were married for 4 years. And Joe filed for divorce on September 5th. Also really kind of sad. I mean, they seem to have been together for a while and really seem to have, I mean, that's still a long time. I think they dated for at least a couple years before that. So it seemed to be a pretty healthy thing going, a longer time than normal, but unfortunately it happened, and it's just rather crazy how that, I mean, one can only speculate as to why. A lot of these things are kind of kept closed off. But when you see the constant, and I kind of picked out the ones that were kind of either more well-known people or like had some interesting longer relationships. But when you look at all the other celeb divorces that I saw on my list before picking out these, like a lot of them were like 1 year, 2 years or less. And it's just really sad. And I think with Joe, like, I wish he was different. But unfortunately, it's just another case of this. And I don't envy the Hollywood life. I don't envy that celebrity life. I think there's something with that life that just makes it really hard to, keep a marriage together for long. And maybe it's the crazy, extravagant lifestyle. Maybe all the temptation. Who knows? But, props to Hugh Jackman. Somehow he was able to live a normal life to an extent and maintain something for 27 years, which is astronomical in the A-list celebrity world. So props to Hugh one more time. let's jump to the Ace family, Austin McBroom and his wife, and 3 children. So I don't know if you heard of the Ace family, but they were, used to be, kind of still are huge on YouTube. They jumped on the scene a few years ago, and now they have like over 10 million subscribers. But they're basically just a very successful family vlog channel where they vlog their life as a family. And they're certainly not the first. I think I've seen many, many YouTube channels before them, but for whatever reason, they were able to hit their stride and just make a lot of viral content. So they made a lot of money. I never really followed them, but I did notice that when Austin McBroom started kind of getting into the more drama-related scene and kind of getting a big head and ego, at least that's how I perceived it. I was kind of put off by it, but it got him on my radar, just as like a consumer of stuff online. And yeah, so basically, there was a time where he was kind of like huge, and then he got even bigger because he started to kind of challenge other big YouTubers to boxing matches. He finally closed a boxing match with this one big TikToker, and they fought. He won the match, but like the business and the event was just so poorly organized that he ended up owing millions of dollars rather than making money from the whole event and live stream. And so with all that, like there was a bunch of like bankruptcy rumors, but he just kept quiet about all of that and never really talked about it. And like now, a couple years later, he's back on the scene, and seems like he has now parted ways amicably with his wife, who they together built this massive YouTube channel and made a lot of money. From what I heard in the rumors, like he would make 7 figures a year, and at one point he had a like 8-figure house. Now, he didn't pay for it all. Someone did an expose and said he was just kind of barely paying the mortgage, but still, like, clearly made a lot from YouTube. Here's a quote from that public announcement of them separating. "The transition is not easy, but we both are making it as easy as it can be for our family. We will continue to be the best parents to our kids. Separations are difficult and most times messy, but you will see how we push through these difficult times as a unit and keep influencing with love and positivity." So, a pretty diplomatic, but I would say honest, from the heart, kind of, a lot of words are kind of what a politician would say, but like it makes sense. Transitions are not easy, and they're making the separation work. I think from the outside, from what I've heard and seen, they usually keep any like big drama, just like basically they don't address it much. So I think there was like a couple years ago before their separation where this one woman came out on TikTok and basically showed all this evidence of Austin McBroom like texting her, and then she claimed that they met up and hooked up a few times behind his wife's back, and how Austin was lying a bunch and saying that, "Oh, I'm actually not together with my wife anymore." And there's a bunch of drama about that, and that blew up in the news. And the response from the Ace family was like nothing. Like they didn't even address it at all. They kind of stayed strong together as a unit and continued on, at least for a couple years. So one will never know for sure what caused this to happen. But I mean, from what I've seen and like how big of a showboat he was during the kind of like videos leading up to the fight, that boxing fight, it just seems to me that like a lot of these boxing fights and influencers and people who get really rich, they just get such a big ego. They start wearing all this show-offy clothes. Austin definitely was. They think they're holier than thou, better than you, when, the dude is not some type of athlete or A-list actor. He's literally a family vlogger who made a lot of money from it. Yet, he thinks he is. And even if you are this big athlete or whatnot, you don't have to be this jerk show off. Shaquille O'Neal is like the one example I could think of where he's still humble despite being a star. Anyhow, the point is it's hard to resist the temptation as a man to get this big ego, and women sometimes have this too, and they think they're holier than thou, and then they start to, think they can, do things behind others' back, have a side piece, and get away with it. Who knows? One will never know. We'll never know all the details. We can only speculate, but these are dangerous things. I'm not saying money is bad or fame is bad. I mean, they also come with a lot of benefits too. I think a lot of people never get rich because they have this false belief that wealthy people are evil or money is evil, but it's not. And there's plenty of everyday people who are millionaires. If you read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and The Millionaire Next Door, you'll find out statistically how many people are millionaires. There's a lot of us. And many of them are just local business owners. They're not in this extravagant, crazy, luxurious lifestyle. So you can contribute a lot. In fact, the people who donate most to charity are millionaires. So money is not evil, but you don't. When you hit this crazy level of fame and money, especially fame, I think that's really when it gets to your head. And so it's a double-edged sword because fame comes with a lot of benefits too. You get access to all these high-status resources, free stuff, a lot more potential mates. People come to you, so it's a double-edged sword for sure. Last but not least, I want to cover Gary Vaynerchuk and Usher, and then maybe touch a little bit on Harrison Ford, and then wrap up. So Gary Vaynerchuk, huge social media expert, business owner, influencer extraordinaire. He has millions of followers on many platforms. He was known as that social media expert, but he also runs a really big, successful marketing agency as his full-time job. So a lot of people know who he is now. At one point, not many did, but now he's almost become a household name. I wouldn't say that far. He's not A-list or B-list celebrity, but he's pretty well known online and in person sometimes too. And here's the thing, just a few hours ago, he posted a photo with his new girlfriend. And the thing is, I think about 1 or 2 years ago, maybe it was 3 years ago. It's been a while, but I remember coming across his Instagram posting about how he had amicably. It was implied. He didn't explicitly state it, but he basically revealed that he had divorced his former wife, and now he's happy and so grateful to be with his new girlfriend. And it clearly wasn't a quick transition. He just kind of kept it hidden for a while, kept the divorce hidden, and then eventually found someone else. And then, as I gather, because he's so in the public eye, he couldn't hide it forever. So he made a post about his partner, and now that's out there now. What's the downside? What's the alternative to this? What's the situation? Well, for me, I think the real shocker is when I read one of his first books. It wasn't his first ever book. I think it was his third book or something. It was a Q&A style book called Ask Gary V, and he would basically answer questions in the book about social media and whatnot. And I read that book from cover to cover, and one of the questions in there was, how did you meet your wife, and how did you know? And he said in such a confident way how, sometimes when you know, you just know. And they hit it off immediately, and like they've never looked back, and they just knew. Well, apparently not, because a few years later, they're divorced. And like I said, you can't make the weak argument that, oh, his wife was only there for a season of his life. They never intended to stay together forever. That's clearly not the case. When you get married, you expect to stay together forever. And I think it's a harrowing tale, because the lesson for me, the takeaway for me, is that like there's so many successful people in business or wealth, and they give advice on business and wealth, but then they start branching out to all these other things, relationship advice and all this other stuff, fitness advice, and they go beyond their credibility. But then the followers just kind of like eat it up, because they're like, they must be successful in one area, so that's, they must be great at all these others. And with Gary, it seemed to be a little touch in that direction. I think that was the only. I mean, he really wasn't going too deep into dating advice, so I'll give him a pass there. But it's dangerous, I think. You have to be careful of the advice you follow from these experts, because clearly he didn't know. He was like, and it turns out it didn't work out in the long run. I mean, he still may have a few beautiful years, and some may argue, well, it was still worth it because of those few years. But I think it's still better off, arguably, to find the right one, so you don't have to go through a messy divorce. So you have to be careful of this advice, especially when they go outside of it, especially because with a lot of these gurus online, they can easily just sweep under the floor all the times they were wrong. Gary made a lot of predictions and business tips and all this stuff about a lot of things, from NFTs to crypto to all sorts of things. And the things he was wrong on, he kind of just, it's easy for him to just sweep under the rug and not mention them again. If he's right on them, I see this, or I used to see this pretty often, he would get his team to highlight it and like bring it back up and say, and start with a clip from him from 7 years ago saying it, and then, now a clip of him now, kind of like reinforcing that he was right. And while that might be a kind of way of boosting your credibility, it's not the best thing in the long run, because you're in a way just hiding the things you did wrong. So you got to be careful. These people are not always correct with their advice, so just be careful of that. Gary's new girlfriend, it's not hard to tell, is fairly attractive. Like, not like supermodel, but like probably more attractive than his previous partner. The way she dresses, it's more on the revealing side. But he's a smart guy. He has his head on his shoulders, so the woman is actually like has a brain too. You go onto her page, she has like certain interests in like personal development books and so forth. But once again, I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see this and notice it. So you got to call it out. I know a lot of the dudes did too when they saw this, and same with Jeff Bezos. And why is that the case? Well, when you reach a higher level, because when Gary started out, he probably didn't even have a social media following, or if he did, it was a small one. But same with Jeff Bezos, they reached another level of fame and attention and status that just warranted them more attention and interest from like higher level women. And I say higher level as a defining factor of all the encompassing traits, not just looks, but looks being one of them, one obvious one. And so you can clearly see that with what's going on. Like, both of these men, they clearly are very intelligent people wanting long-term relationships. Therefore, they're valuing various physical traits. If you look at Jeff Bezos' new girlfriend, and see her speak, she's also very intelligent too. And so they're not just going for, I don't know if they can, because like sometimes these rich businessmen aren't even that great at game or any of that too. You run into a lot of rich people who can't do well in dating, but they do seem to be looking for looks and personality and intelligence and all these other traits too, not just, who's the most attractive but is a bimbo in the head. So that's it. I think the only other one that I haven't mentioned on my list would be Usher and that whole drama that happened with Usher and this other celebrity. So let me just close on that. So if you didn't hear this celeb news, it's kind of along the same lines as some of the stuff I said before, but kind of more skewing towards the Bobby Altov Drake situation, where you have someone in a committed relationship and they are one partner is just kind of maybe skeptical, scared of having that other partner anywhere near this like high status philanderer player type of musician. This case, it's Usher, not Drake. And I don't know if you heard the news, but there's this one girl who used to be famous. She used to be like a big star on Nickelodeon, and now she's done, I think, a few, roles as an adult in films. Her name's Keke Palmer. Some people really know her. They're huge fans of hers. I mean, she has a huge Instagram following. But, the point being, she has 14 million on Instagram, and her now ex-husband, but at the time husband, was just kind of like a regular dude. I don't know how he managed to pull that off, but, it goes to show you it's possible. And so this was in, I think, 2023, so not that long ago, like literally like a couple months before I recorded this. But in 2023, she had an incident with Usher. So essentially what happened is her boyfriend, Darius, I don't think they ever got married, but from what I could tell, her boyfriend, Darius Jackson, was home with their baby, and Keke just wanted a night out with her friends to see Usher in concert. Okay, so you can kind of already see where this is going, but probably not exactly how you think it. So nothing happened between her and Usher at the concert, from what I can tell, that was like extremely significant. I think she did get called on the stage because Usher knew she was a celebrity, and she has 14 million Instagram followers. That's huge. So, and then Keke was wearing something like somewhat revealing for the concert and like, dancing along. And then like, I think there's some like suggestive dancing and grinding, but that was about it. And then Darius just goes off on Twitter, like saying like how a mother of a child shouldn't be doing all this stuff and how it's just disrespectful and it's terrible. Clearly, like, in a very jealous, protective state. And so, the general public, or at least a decent amount of women, who knows about the general public? I mean, some would argue that Darius is in his right. I think some men were actually on that side too, but good portion of people were like, you're out of bounds, you're crazy, you're ridiculous. And Darius just kind of doubled down with his tweets and said, like, not at all. Like, this was literally like, and he was just saying stuff that like I should be able to say this when the mother of my child is out doing this stuff. It's just not right. And so that turned into a big spat online, but then it got even worse. Apparently, when Keke returned home, it became a huge scuffle. We don't know all the details. What we do know is that apparently there was some like domestic abuse reports gone out, and then they divorced. So yeah, they just got into a huge fight, and then shortly after, Kiki then did a music video with Usher where she basically played fun at this whole thing, where she's kind of like dancing with Usher on this whole stage and stuff. And it seems like in her view, it's like she was just like, poking fun at this whole drama and saying like, oh, big deal. I went to a concert with Usher, and after all, I'm a mother. And she does this whole dance number with Usher. And so now they're divorced, and that's the whole story in a nutshell. And so what's the commentary on this? So first off, Darius is relatively young. He was about 29 when this all happened. So one thing common through all these kind of celeb stories is that, if you marry young, I mean, it's just a higher chance that, you're not really mature enough to know right from wrong, what's important to look for in a partner, and you can get it wrong. Now, women, arguably, it's okay for them to marry younger, since some would argue that's where they peak in terms of their prime, at least in terms of looks. But yeah, I think for both genders, it could be better just to, wait a bit, marry older. Had Darius not gotten so outspoken and immature on Twitter, they could potentially still be together. Maybe not with the... Okay, I forgot about the domestic abuse stuff. If that stuff is true, then like, yeah, that's not good at all. That is not accepted in any way, and they may still should have broken up anyways. But yeah, if the domestic abuse was not involved and he was just being really passive aggressive on Twitter like that, I think that was a bad move. It is not a effective, productive strategy to air out your laundry with the general public rather than directly with your partner, and be passive aggressive like that. You want to give direct feedback, not this toxic passive aggressive feedback, especially when your partner is so much in the limelight, because you're just inviting the general public to eat that up, turn it into celeb gossip news, turn it into drama and all this stuff, and just it turns into a mess for her. So, a lot of his tweets and stuff are now deleted, but doesn't matter. They already screen captured that. He wrote in a since deleted post, "We live in a generation where a man of the family doesn't want the wife and mother to his kids to showcase booty cheeks to please others, and he gets told how much of a hater he is. This is my family and my representation. I have standards and morals to what I believe. I rest my case." So I may be in a minority here, but I think when you look at his actual words and his principles, I also do think it's perfectly fair to for a man of the family to not want his wife and mother of his kids to showcase his booty cheeks, and have certain standards and morals. However, I don't think it's right for him to passively aggressively post to the general public about that in the way he did. I also think he should have talked directly and settled this with his wife rather than come at the general public with it. And then 3, many men do this. If they're really not comfortable, they go with their partner to the concert, to guard said partner. Now, in terms of the wardrobe choice with the booty cheeks, I do think that, once again, especially in America, in the U.S., I think some women, like a small subsection of women, are kind of pushing too much, the boundaries of what's okay with how revealing their clothing is, to the point where they're almost delusional in thinking that this is okay when it's just really too revealing and almost inviting other men to approach. So I don't agree with that. However, I think that's an issue predominantly with certain Western countries, not everywhere. And I think, that's not okay in all instances. In this instance, I mean, I'm not going to comment because it's subjective on what Kiki thinks is appropriate or not with the wardrobe. But certainly, like, if you really have an issue with it, I know you got a baby, y'all are rich, get a babysitter. Like, go together, guard her, rather than passive-aggressively tweeting about it from your home while she's out. It just doesn't add much to it. And if this dude was tweeting about this after she returned home for days afterwards, that just is also not a effective strategy. So that likely led to more fights that led to said divorce. But who really knows the full story? Once again, these are things that are not intentionally told to the general public. I, for one, believe that nothing really happened between them, and Usher didn't want to go there, and Kiki probably didn't want to go there either. And this man was, to a degree, rightfully apprehensive, but he just executed terribly. And then he got a little too apprehensive and guarding, and then, like, Usher and him on Kiki just made the whole thing into a giant joke for him, and they made it into a song and even made some money off of it. So Darius, unfortunately, lost out here, and now they share a child, although they are separated. So that's just rather unfortunate. As far as how they met, I'm still not over the whole thing that he seems to just be a regular dude. Like, he's not a celebrity or anything. So I don't know how they ask you that, but that's a win. That may be another lesson for you to be able to kind of shoot above your weight class. It's possible, but maybe not for the best either. Oh, okay, so I just looked it up. Darius Jackson is an actor, clearly not an A-list or B-list actor, but he was an actor in that recent film Nope, which was pretty big. They went public in August of 2021. You don't really know much about how they met or whatnot. But apparently he's acted in a few small projects and also works as a fitness instructor. So once again, I don't know how he pulled that off, because apparently it says on Business Insider that he also works as a fitness instructor at Inspire Fitness, which really doesn't indicate that this guy is making much from acting if he needs to work as a fitness instructor. So, dude, it's possible. You have enough personality and all this other stuff. You don't necessarily have to be at the same level of status or fame if you can show other traits of value. But apparently he still needed to work on certain things and could have executed that better. Whenever you're heated emotionally, better to kind of wait till you cool down before reacting, especially if you have some access to social media, because you don't want to post something you'll regret. So that's about it. Thanks so much for listening if you saw the whole thing. But in summary, I think there's a lot of big principles I talked about here. So the recap: as a man or a person in a relationship, it's good to set healthy boundaries of what's acceptable and what's not, and make that clear with your partner. Have the strength and assertiveness to walk away if they continue to break your boundaries or what's okay. So that's a lot of Will Smith references there. And then, as I mentioned with Tom Brady, Will Smith, Bill Gates, and Jeff Bezos, money and fame are clearly not everything or not the most important things in terms of keeping a long-term relationship that doesn't end in a quick divorce. They're certainly helpful in attracting and meeting higher value people, but that's different from maintaining a relationship. And therefore, I recommend books by John Gottman, where he mentions various other traits you should look for, including trust, respect, similar values, similar dreams, a lack of contempt, criticism, defensiveness, and stonewalling. Once again, his scientific books on what causes divorce is incredibly valuable. And then another huge principle mention is that like the celebrity, social media influencer, and I guess Hollywood A-list scene world, it just has such a crazy lifestyle and temptations and all this stuff that it is really dangerous for marriages and so forth. Like I said though, that's not intended to depress you or discourage you, because there are people like Hugh Jackman who still was able to pull off something amazing, which was 27 years of marriage before his recent announcement of a divorce. I mean, still kind of sad that he got a divorce, but it is still possible. And keep in mind, 99% of us are not in those type of situations, in these crazy, extravagant A-list celebrity lifestyles. So you don't have to worry about that. And there's just going to be a lot less temptation and stuff. But you still may need to be cautious, especially if you live in a city like Vegas or Miami or LA, where there's still more of that kind of behavior floating everywhere, or New York for that matter. Especially if your partner or you are constantly on social media or have a following of some sort. So, yeah, I mean, it just depends. I mean, if your following is on something tame and safe, like farming or knitting, you may be good. But like if you're like in the whole modeling space, I mean, could be dangerous. And then last but not least, another big point and lesson learned is the potential danger of having a partner who is significantly dreaming about one day hitting it off and being really famous or rich, or mostly famous in some type of outward performing type of job. Either aspiring or believing that they can do that and taking action on doing that, or just like aspiring to go down that, and you could see a potential avenue where it could lead to something big in the future. In most cases, it will not happen because it's not easy to get there. But if that is the case and you are not ready for that lifestyle or not interested in that lifestyle, if they do hit it big, that can be a huge issue for many reasons. That may not be a lifestyle that you want. And as mentioned with the Crystal Bowersock's American Idol situation, where they split for her final performance, it's just not a good scene for a country bumpkin who doesn't want that. So it can cause potential rifts down the line if you don't screen for that early in choosing a partner. Or it could be a situation where maybe you are supportive of that, but you had no idea of the mega ultra rise to fame that would follow and the severe discrepancy in status and the status boost that entails and all the temptations that come with it, which mostly lead to potentially your partner cheating on you or something like that. That could happen. I'm not saying it always will, but it is a probability. It's higher than zero. Maybe it's not high, but it's possible. And that's what we saw with the Bella Poarch incident and possibly the Bobby Altov incident. We don't know all the details. And yeah, I think the last dude that I forgot to mention, but I'll mention now to kind of illustrate the flip side of that before social media, but a very similar type of deal with the genders reversed, is Harrison Ford. So this dude was a carpenter until like his 40s or 50s, where he like really kicked it off with, I believe, Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, and then just like killed the game with Star Wars and Indiana Jones and all that. And he went from your professional carpenter with a wife and 2 young sons to like a mega star. And, you know, because of, I think basically he got his role through, I think, doing some carpenting work for some like directors and stuff. But after like he hit it off, like surprise, surprise, I think things started to change. So he divorced his first wife around 1979, which is like roughly when like he started to begin to hit his stride. So Raiders of the Lost Ark was released in 1981, but like before that, like the first Star Wars had already come out. So there's that, and then his second marriage was from 1983 until 2000, and then they divorced in 2004, and then now I think he's with his third wife, who he met in 2002 at the Golden Globes. But yeah, it's just really interesting to see his story. I don't know too much about it, so I can't really infer too much. Seems like he still has some long marriages, and it didn't seem like he just immediately went crazy when his status boosted up. I can't tell. I'm just reading Wikipedia, but it's another potential example from the other perspective. So hopefully you got a lot of entertainment out of this. I don't want to see any hate comments, arguments, negativity, big fights in the comments anywhere I post this. Keep in mind, this is mostly entertainment, so I'd love to see some like, oh yeah, that was really fun to watch. Why can't I get a bunch of that? I feel like the internet's relatively more mean to me than the typical person. Why can't it be like Kaisenet, where he's just posting fun, entertaining stuff, and all the comments are like, oh dude, that was hilarious. That's what I'm getting at. Anyhow, hope you had some fun just consuming this celeb gossip like popcorn, and I'll see you in the next episode, if there is one.